So last night about 6:30, talking to a good friend of mine, Rob LaRue.
Hi.
And we decided we were going to come out this morning before it got sunny after the rain, and we were going to go to Helton Creek Falls, which is in Union County, Georgia. Now it's kind of interesting because I'm going to be shooting with my two cameras that I'm using to do the vlogging, the Canon M50 with the Tamron 10-24, and I'm also going to use the EOS RP with a Tamron 17-35, of course with the adapters. Sorry about the shaky cameras and everything else. I'm making sure I don't have some great busting butt footage. So at some point I'm going to touch on the cameras that I'm using for the vlogging, but I decided today I would just come with mirrorless, because part of what I want to do is I want to sort of see how far mirrorless has come, especially full frame, without putting a lot of money into it. And I think that the little combination of the RP with the 17-35 is really a kind of a neat deal. It's nice, compact, it's got a good feel, and eventually I'll start using some of the other cameras as well, but just wanted to have the opportunity to check it out. My favorite kind of weather to photograph waterfalls, though, is when it's cloudy and it's just rained. The rocks have a nice coating of moisture on them. It makes it so when I use a circular polarizer, it's going to knock off all that glare, and it will really give me some good saturation in what greens there are. It'll give me good light on the rocks as well. Give me good separation and contrast with the black rocks and the white water and everything. But you know, there's no harsh light at this point to, you know, mess with the exposure. So we're going to we're almost here. I'm going to turn this off in a second, and we'll get the other cameras set up as well and start to talk about how we're going to actually do these images. So first I'm going to do one without the circular polarizer to show the glare. And again, I think it's pretty important to make sure that you're using a cable release, because I'm looking at half a second exposure. Actually, I'm going to go up. I'm going to get some more depth of field to about f11. So f11 is going to slow me down to about 2.5 seconds. It's going to give me that nice misty effect. So let's do that real quick. Beautiful. I'm going to do one just a little bit less exposure. That way I don't blow out any of the details. Just looking at my histogram, making sure everything looks good. Really nice. I like that. So in the movie mode of this camera, I can only slow it down to a certain amount, so it's not going to give you the full effect. But I'm going to very slowly rotate this circular polarizer, and you can see the difference in the saturation and everything else that it makes as well. I'm going to give it a little bit more exposure here so you can see the difference on the rocks and the foliage around there as well. But you can see how much of a difference it makes between the circular polarizer and non-polarized. It's just such a much more pleasing image to use that polarizer versus not using the polarizer. So I tell all of my students and everyone that I can possibly shed light onto, you know, when you're photographing any type of foliage or water that's got shiny rocks, go ahead and put that circular polarizer on it. You'd be amazed at how much of a difference it's going to make in the glare, the saturation, and it also helps your exposure to slow it down to give you a more pleasing effect. So I wanted to do a couple pictures to demonstrate the difference of the circular polarizer versus a neutral density filter. And a neutral density filter is just what it says. You can almost see me through it. It's just what it says. It affects your exposure. You can do 2 stops, 4 stops, 10 stops, whatever the case may be. On a brighter day that you can't get those 2-second exposures is when you're going to want to use that neutral density filter. For us, this day is perfect without a neutral density filter, so I'm really not going to do anything with it right now. Now, as we explore some of the other areas around here, I may go ahead and put it on there, but a neutral density filter is not going to remove the glare off of the rocks and the foliage. It's only going to slow your exposure down by making the light less dense. I mean, it's going to make it darker is all that it's going to do. So like a 2-stop, if you're getting 1/8 of a second, it's going to give you a 1/30th of a second. Or excuse me, if it's giving you an 1/8 of a second, it's going to slow it down 2 stops. So it's going to give you a 1/2 a second, because half of it, an 1/8 would be a 1/4, then a 1/2 of a second. So it's going to increase your exposure time, which is what you want to do to get that smooth, milky effect. Again, on a day like this, there's just complete cloud cover. There's no need to have that. So I'm not going to do that at this point in time. As we shoot the lower set of falls here, if it brightens up, I may do another segment with it. On the way home, we're going to hit DeSoto Falls. There may be a little more light on it, so maybe I'll get a chance to show you. But a circular polarizer, I typically will use a neutral density filter and a circular polarizer in conjunction with each other, because I still want to remove the glare. Even if I'm lengthening the exposure, I want to do both. So a lot of times I'll put the neutral density filter on, I'll stack the circular polarizer filter on front of it, and that enables me to get a longer exposure, reduce the glare, get the saturation I want, and it just looks so much better. So right now we're not going to put it on there, but just to give you an idea what it does. So anyhow, that's it for now. Hopefully we'll put it on later.